this evening, I'm very excited to introduce you to, is Jason Gleaves. And Jason Gleaves joined the Royal Air Force in 1986 at 17 years of age and completed his basic training at RAF Hereford, home of the S.A.S. Jason was stationed at RAF St Athans, RAF Cosford, RAF Honington Strike Command, and Valley Coningsby, Marham, Brize Norton and Sealand until 1997. Gleaves' new book, UFO Photos, Computer Analysis of Worldwide UFO Images through the decades, covers historical photos using up-to-date processing techniques of unidentified flying objects and anomalies through the decades taken from around the world, revisiting some well-known documented UFO cases from the past to more recent times. Tonight we'll discuss a little bit, actually quite a bit, his new book and his own personal UFO account at RAF Cosford Air Force Base, UK, during 1993, and the important connection and aftermath regarding the UK ex-Ministry of Defense UFO Project. This is going to be a fascinating show tonight. And I must say I'm very impressed with Jason and his. You can access his website. He has a blogspot, flyingdiscpress.blogspot.co.uk. And if there's another, I know he's on YouTube as well, so we're going to get into that tonight. So please welcome Jason to the show this evening. Good evening, Jason.
Hi, Solaris.
Hello there. It's such a wonderful pleasure to have you on board tonight. I'm very excited.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. And, you know, I am, like I touched on off air, you've been on my Facebook page for a long time and you've been holding out on me. So now I've got you.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, haven't we?
Oh, my gosh, it's amazing. And you're just cloaked under the radar, but that's good. That's kind of stealthing you. So congratulations on your book. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I want to dive in and just kind of, after all the years you spent with the military, what guided you to write the book at this point in the continuum?
It was a natural progression from the Facebook pages and things that I've been writing for, and I just wanted to bring a book out for people that have not really got into ufology at all, and they want some answers to the beginnings. Like we all start off somewhere where we're trying to dig and find out what's happening to ourselves, or sightings, experiences, etc. So I just wanted to bring a book out which was going to be on a layman's sort of terms, where people, like I said, can basically get the basic grasp of ufology, and then they can progress further and deeper themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think that's wonderful, and I applaud you for doing that. We kind of touched on a lot of disinformation out there, a lot of people in the quote-unquote illusion of UFO community, which I question. And I like this because of your background. First of all, you have the nice Royal Canadian. Oh, that's a Freudian slip if I've ever heard one. Royal Air Force. Boom. Anyways, Royal Air Force background, which literally gives you such a nice benchmark insofar as what's going on with this type of a thing. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more about your events over there and at the base itself. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was at RAF Cosford, which is it's an Air Force base in the UK in the Midlands. And I was on the base that night, and it says all this in the book. And it was a friend of mine who was in charge of the guard room, who's an orderly corporal for that evening.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this also correlates to Rendlesham, correct?
Yeah, it's sort of it's probably as important as Rendlesham as sightings in the UK go. Mm-hmm. People generally just go towards Rendlesham when they start talking about ufology in UK, but RAF Cosford, I think, is just as important.
Right, and it seems like it's almost been cloaked to some degree, or certainly hasn't been given that much attention. What would you say about that? Yeah,
it's cloaked as such. Yeah, Nick Pope was obviously involved the day after, and had dealings, and he wrote quite a good section in the book as well regarding the aftermath and how he approached and what he actually did through his research himself, because he was in the MOD in Whitehall in London at the time on the British X-Files desk as such. Mm-hmm. And and he speaks about it. There's links in the book as well, and anyone can go on Facebook and YouTube and things and find out. He does talk about it, about the sighting and how it was all dealt with. Mm-hmm. So and the actual sighting was actually seen. It was in March 1993, and it was a huge triangular-shaped craft that was seen. But it was seen throughout the UK that evening. It was seen all over the place by on-duty policemen and civilians, around, people who just had a sighting themselves. Mm-hmm. And it did actually go from RAF Cosford to another Air Force base, which is about 20-odd miles away, RAF Shawbury, which is a helicopter base. And it was actually, they had a radar lock on it there, and they actually tracked it in the same. And the person in the air traffic control at the time, who was on duty that evening, because it was early in the morning when it was seen, said they witnessed it actually firing lasers towards the ground, and their impression of the sighting that they had, and that it was actually looking for something.
Very interesting. And then you mentioned also it's like about 800 feet. It was actually fairly large, right?
Yeah, it was described to be the size of a battleship.
Wow.
And actually on the front cover of the book, just in the background, you can actually see that is the actual guard post that it was seen. And basic to the story is, or the account, my friend who was in the guard room at the time, the orderly corporal, so everyone was in there off duty as well, waiting to go on. And there was a young lad, a trainee, because actually Cosford was a training camp and still is. So he was only young, he's probably about 18, and he was on the actual gate on the airfield, which you can see in the book it's the actual guard post. And at night time it was pitch black and everything, and in the guard room it was nice and quiet that evening, and all of a sudden the radio started to come into play, and there's this young guy on the guard post itself on the airfield was screaming down the radio to get the guard commander out to the airfield because something was huge over the airfield. So everyone was obviously scrambled together, went out there, and the RAF police and all the personnel went out. And when they got there, they saw this huge triangular shaped craft, silent, just a hum to it over the airfield. They witnessed it, obviously documented it, and the actual documents are in the book, which were released by the MOD. And then this thing took off at high velocity, and that's where it went on to the next RAF base, RAF Shawbury.
That's fascinating. Do you think this was some kind of a beta test with our exotic technologies department?
Yeah, for years I've been sort of lulling over in my mind, what it could have been. Could it been extraterrestrial? Could it have been secret covert technology? Anything. And I do tend to lean more towards that side now. I think it probably could have been, a secret covert type of craft. But it was during that time in the 90s where it was the wave throughout the world where triangular-shaped craft was seen.
Right.
It was quite dominant for that shape to be seen. So it could have been that era that they were testing the equipment, testing the craft. They've got numerous reasons it could have been. So
right, I agree. And also, how did it affect the crew or the staff or personnel psychologically? Was there any issue regarding what they saw? It
was kept quite hush on the base. It wasn't at the time. You got to. This sort of thing wasn't really spoken about. It wasn't. If somebody saw something, they were probably more worried about their career and everything by talking about it. But what I do recall is the guy was quite shook up. The young trainee that saw the craft. I don't know about any other personnel, whether they come forward and talk or want to say anything themselves, but it left a mark on them all. I know that.
And there wasn't any operator, obviously. They didn't see any occupants, or no?
No, not what I recall. And I also don't recall if it was actually recorded or photographed, which I would have thought it probably would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And did it appear more solid or more transparent?
Solid, as far as I know. And like I said, it was seen throughout the UK, and it was seen by, some people who are obviously quite well trained observers, like civilian police, people like that. So, it was seen in a big area throughout the UK. Obviously, the UK is not as big as America in size, but it's still a big area,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where did it appear? Did it appear from a coordinate in space, or did it come up from the water, or in the forest? Do you know how it actually just appeared?
I don't know about how it actually appeared, but whether it came, because the airfield at RAF Cosford, it's in the countryside like most airfields are. Mm-hmm. So it could have come from the sky down. It could have come, on a transit, from the valleys across. It could have come from anywhere, really. And if it was from extraterrestrial in origin, more on that side, it could have been interdimensional. You could have gone, there's many avenues you could go down.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's more stealth, and maybe it was cloaked, and then all of a sudden it just kind of showed itself. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating.
Quite possibly.
Very, very interesting. When things just appear, you have to always look for at what point of origin do they show up. I think it's fascinating. And on a base like that, now this was back in 1993, don't they have surveillance or cameras where they can actually capture footage in media reviews, or no?
Probably do, as like a CCTV type of system, more advanced. And like I said, anything like this, I'm sure military people well within their, have cameras and things like that. I mean, 1983, it was before everyone had mobile phones like today, where you can just pop out your phone and take a photograph, a video. It's so easy nowadays. But going back, it was probably the old 35mm cameras, that type of thing, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I was looking there has to be some kind of a record of footage, and that's why I'm always curious. Besides, I'm pretty sure there's got to be a surveilling system around there somewhere, but very, very interesting. And I wanted to ask you, you said it was firing lasers onto the airfield, or literally firing a laser. What color was the laser?
I don't know what color the actual laser was, but or the beam, whatever it was firing down. But the impression given from the air traffic controller at Shawbury, RAF Shawbury, is that it was looking for something. The way it was coming in at a steady, slow speed over the airfield itself there, that it was. I don't really know. I mean, why it went to Cosford either as well, because Cosford now is it's a training base, obviously, but it's also a museum. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of old aircraft, a lot of first old aircraft. So, I mean, another theory is whether it was a extraterrestrial in origin, somebody visiting, they were looking at the museum and the old aircraft. It could have been any number of reasons, but they going back to what you said with the beam, that was the impression that the air traffic controller, he was, is an observer, professional observer of aircraft and everything else. So that it was looking for something that was.
And wasn't it jamming the electrical devices over there, or no?
Not what I know. Not what I recall. Yeah.
Like but it was turning on, or was it turning on TV sets or something? Did you say it was switching things on and off, or no?
No, I don't recall that, but yeah.
Okay, so it didn't have any influence over anything like that, I was wondering. Yeah, so I always look at it like a beta test, but you never know. It's really fascinating, and the Black Triangle seems to be one of those popular ones. You're right.
Yeah.
And do you know what year the Black Triangle actually really was more popular? Was it in the 90s?
It was during the night. I mean, it's seen now, and it's most people go back and say it's the TR-3B, which is a anti-gravity craft that is known to be flying around. It seems to become more apparent, that people are talking about that side. But during the spate of the 90s, that's when it was generally seen. That as you go through ufology, the shape of craft seen They obviously vary throughout the ages, and during the 90s that was quite relevant for people to see triangular shaped craft, because you normally starting originally going way back 50s plus, you're talking the disc shaped craft, and then cylindrical shaped craft, and lately now more people are seeing the orb shapes, which are around the chemtrails and the, a lot of people. It's a good friend of mine, Maria Kayali in the UK, and she captures some really, really good footage of orbs which are around chemtrails or just generally in the sky around where she's living.
Very interesting.
And in Australia, you've got Peter Slattery and his partner Sol. Again, they capture some really, really good evidence of orb-shaped craft and various different types, because I've analysed quite a bit of footage for them. And I'll be speaking at the SETI Ranch in July, I think it is, beginning of July, where they'll all be speaking, but I'll be doing a live link via Zoom to the conference itself.
That's going to be nice. You'll be over here.
No, I won't be. I'll be doing it via the UK, but via like a Skype link,
Well, okay. Well, if you ever come over here, let me know. I'd like to see you in person. So
yeah, sure.
Please let me know. Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow, that's going to be really cool. You talk about the orbs around chemtrails. That's very interesting to me because I see more and more geoengineering, of course, and with the chemtrails, it seems to be like they're bouncing radar signals, right? Or they're. Wouldn't you say that? That's what they do covertly. So I'm wondering if a lot of that is really cloaking all of these different types of craft, or maybe even experimental technologies. So that's really interesting that she brought that up. But you actually analyze these. Now, what do you look for in pictures of UFOs? What do you look for that makes it look like it's a valid photograph?
Obviously, I get sent quite a few photographs of what people have taken. And a lot of the time, they are explainable. They can vary anything from generally birds, misidentification of birds, and things like that. But then aircraft, obviously, a misidentification. The object is there; it's just misidentified. And I'll just do the same thing like I do with everything. I'll go through the process of upscaling photographs. I'll always try and ask for the original photograph, because obviously for the quality and detail, that you need to get from a photograph, because a lot of photographs are, when they're reposted or it goes through the process, first, second generation of being posted, the quality of the photograph will degrade quite a lot. So that's why I always try and ask for the original if possible. And then I would try and upscale this photograph, so you bring up the detail by not losing. Obviously, it becomes pixelated if you don't upscale a photograph or try to do that first. I generally find if you zoom in, or anyone can do this. This is it's no secret. Anybody can do this. You upscale a photograph and you zoom in. Sorry, before upscaling, you zoom into a photograph. It becomes pixelated, so it becomes very square, block effect, and you can't really get a lot of information or detail from a photograph. So when you upscale it, you're trying to keep the integrity of the photograph the best you can, and then you enhance. So, I use like Photoshop, which is Adobe, and again, people hear the word Photoshop and think you're actually messing around with photographs, or you're trying to change something. You're not. You're just using the filters on there to enhance what you're seeing. So, and it's remarkable the detail you can bring out in a photograph. And quite often, more often than not, when you've actually gone through the process of enhancing photographs, bringing it up and analysing them, you find that they are aircraft, etc. In the book, near the beginning of the book, I do actually show where there's a misidentification, and the person who took the photograph, they were sent to me via Philip Mantle, who is a British ufologist. I don't know if you know of Philip. And he actually helped me publish the book through Flying Disc Press. Nice. And he sends me quite a lot of images. He gets himself. Obviously, he gets a lot of images himself. And he sent me these 2 photographs, which were taken by a civilian passenger aircraft pilot, a Brazilian. I think he was Brazilian. And he was over in the UK in Wiltshire, which is home of the crop circles and everything. He was over here on vacation, and he took 2 photographs, which I was sent of. One, when I analysed, and I could tell straight away it was a military aircraft.
Really?
I think it was a Tornado, because I used to work on Tornadoes. So straight away, I knew by the silhouette of the aircraft and the features, I knew that's what it was. But then the second photograph, when you first look at the photograph, the actual topic of the photograph was a flagpole in the center. You can see these images in the book. Is a flagpole, and either side of the flagpole there are 2 anomalies, objects. And first impression when you look at them, before I analyze them, they look disc shape, oval. So you do think, first impression, you think it's unidentified flying object. It's a UFO of some kind. But when I actually analysed the photograph, upscaled, zoomed in, went through the whole process, they were actually 2 military jets again. And one of them you can see in the book where I've enhanced and brought it up, and you can see it's actually banking. And from a distance, you've got the impression that it's a disc in shape. So again, it's just from a credible witness who took the photographs, not of the objects, he was taking them of a subject, which was the flagpole with the Union Jack on the top, and got these objects. So I do get an awful lot of photographs sent to me like that, and you go through the process of bringing out what you can, and most of the time they are actually just not recognized by the person of what they really are, a bird or an aircraft or whatever. So
right, that makes sense. Well, you know what to look for. That's the thing with your expertise and your background, and that's something that's you have an eye for that sort of thing, and that's important, because I think a lot of people out there who are quote unquote in the UFO community, even people who are out there doing presentations, they don't really know. They're just kind of going with cookie cutter information. I hate to say it. I'm not saying all of them are. I'm just saying quite a few. And with your background, you really do understand how to decode. I like that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I really applaud you for that. We need more of you out there insofar as reality goes.
like I always say, in ufology itself, there are no experts, because everybody is not winging it as such, but we all start somewhere with encounters or experiences, and you're obviously interested in the subject, and you get deeper into it, and you go that way. But it's not insulting to say that to people. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I just don't believe there are any real experts. They might be an expert in their discipline of photography or things like that, but
I agree with you. I think they have to be an expert, I would say, probably in the field of, if they were military, in the military field and your field. I mean, I consider experts who know the craft because that's what they've worked on, or maybe that's what they've been involved in with covertly. Those people I can understand being experts, but most of them can't talk about it. I mean, they're basically obligated not to speak. So you're dealing with people who have to keep their mouths shut, and then you have everybody else doing whatever, disinformation, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, most people, again, that get into ufology, or they're not generally interested in it to begin with. It's something that's happened to them, or it's sort of pulled them in, and then I call it the Richard Dreyfuss syndrome, which is and you become manic and obsessive with the the topic, and you're getting pulled deeper and deeper into it, and
Yep.
not all the time you actually get the answers. I'm still looking for answers myself. I'm still looking as how really I got into it. But going back when I was young, that's how I sort of got into it way before I was even in the military or anything like this. We didn't even know about UFOs or discs when I was 7 years old with my sister, and we saw a disc-shaped object outside the window.
Wow.
And I'd actually forgotten about it, completely forgotten about it. And it was my sister, really, when I started to bring things out, with ufology and digging in it, without really talking to her about it. And she said to me one day, she said, "Oh, do you remember that disc we saw outside the window?" And I went, what? And then something clicked, and it started to come back to me. And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember that now."
Wow.
And it was I sent you a picture, didn't I, of what I actually did.
Right.
Of what, because obviously there's no photograph evidence or such. We were playing in the bedroom as young kids do, and all of a sudden it was like, look at that outside the window, and then it took off, and then we just carried on playing like nothing had happened.
Very interesting. So you don't recall having missing time or anything like that?
I've had other instances where I've had missing time and things like that. I haven't really spoken about it much, and I will do in the future. But I had a grey in my house, and about 5 hours missing time after it.
Wow! But what year was that?
That was after the Gulf War, the first one, 91, and it was just before I was posted to Cosford.
Wow!
So I believe it's linked. There's links there. And again, that's what I was saying to you before. I'm still looking for answers myself. I'm still going down that road, of...
Well, you sound like a contactee, and you also sound like, maybe it comes from your heritage and your lineage, but very, very interesting. Have you ever had a regression done? You haven't done that, or no?
No, I'd like to. Obviously, I'd like to... with Mary, I followed Mary Rodwell's work.
Oh, yeah, Mary's great.
A long time, and she's going to be at a talk in the UK this year, so I'm going to maybe try and set something up then with her. But she's also talking on the same platform for the SETI talk coming up in.
Interesting.
But I followed Mary's work for a long time, obviously, like I said, through looking to things relating to myself, and that's how I came across Peter Slattery's work in Australia, because it was a regression she'd done on him that I'd watched. And it's funny how things connect in this world of ufology.
They do. It's almost synchronistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. I'm wondering, with your background in the military, I don't know how that would fly. I mean, if you have any programs running in your head and subliminal, I don't know if you have screen memories. I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just saying, I don't know how that would work with having a regression with your background in the military, or if it's even possible.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some firewalls that they put in, technically speaking, I would say, but that's just my analysis of it. But very interesting. But I like Mary, and I think she'd be great because she's very trustworthy, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I get, like everybody else, I get a lot of helicopters flying over the house. I've got a lot of videos of them, and I know the military. I live directly on the flight path for Liverpool John Lennon Airport and Manchester Airport, and then we also get the aircraft going into British aerospace and things like that. So I know what I'm looking at, and things like that, and the helicopters that come over quite a bit. There was something that happened last year. I think it was last year, where I'd gone for a walk. I've got two dogs, and I walk them every day. Do the same route and everything, just on the back field where I live. And there's like a reservoir that I walk up with the dogs. And I can remember getting to the top of the reservoir, and every time I could hear this Chinook helicopter coming, because I know the sound by working on them in the Air Force. So I knew it was coming, and I'd had other sightings of helicopters and Chinooks and stuff coming over. And so I got my camera phone out to my iPhone to film this helicopter coming over, just to capture it, and then I carry on walking the dog. And then I can remember seeing the helicopter and things like that, and then having the walk. When I actually got home, my son and wife said to me, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Oh, I've just been up walking the dogs. It's like a 20-minute walk." And they said, "You've been gone over an hour." And I said, "Oh, I swear I'd only gone 20 minutes. I'd done the same thing that I'd done every other day." And I looked at the footage, and it actually starts off with, I remember filming this helicopter actually flying over and doing whatever, and whether something else happened, I don't know. But on the footage, it actually starts with my feet looking. It's actually filming my feet on the floor, and then you can hear the helicopter flying off in the distance as it's going away, and then it stops. So something's happened there on the footage as well.
No kidding. Sounds like you're having some very interesting experience. You could write a book on that alone.
Probably that's not the least. I mean, there's plenty of other things of stuff where have happened on when I worked on a nuclear base, RAF Honington in the UK.
Right.
And
you probably can't talk about it, but that's okay if you can't.
I could say what happened. It was on that base, everyone has to do a duty called a rapid response team. So you could be called out at any time to an incident, obviously in the compounds where they keep all the armaments, etc. Long story short, you would have to do a test where they would call you out any time of night or day. So we were called out early hours of the morning, so everybody's in the same billet, like an 18-man billet. The truck, you'd all pile onto the 4-tonner trucks, all being taken down in military gear and everything. And as you go into the compounds, it's all done through like a tag system. So when you go in, you're given a tag. And when you come out, you give your tag back, and they know who's gone in, who's gone out, etc. You know, it's quite an easy, simple way of doing it. I can remember we're all going into this compound, and as you get to this compound, remember there's all tall towers, guarded towers with the searchlights, etc. You know, and as we went in, it all went smooth, or I thought. And then we were all coming back out, giving our tags in. And as we came out, we had an extra guy with us. That nobody knew who he was, and nobody knew where he'd come from, etc. And obviously, they pinned this poor guy to the ground. And at the time, I was a lot younger and stupid and naive to all these type of things. And I can remember just thinking at the time, well, that poor guy, you know, he's been pinned to the ground with rifles, etc., to his head. And then we were whisked off in the trucks, and I never thought anything else of it again. But, you know, there's a lot of little things like that have happened, you know. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like psychological operations, you know, it just sounds like they're doing something. And I'm not sure. I mean, I know you probably can't elaborate on it, but, you know, the idea of being in the military is to be entrained to some degree. And I'm always wondering how much of that is erasure and programming, you know, especially when you're dealing with things that are maybe classified or top secret. You know, you just don't know. So many things, you know, so many levels. And I can understand why they do that to some degree. But also it leaves people kind of confused after they, you know, decide to, you know, leave, in my opinion. People have flashbacks, you know. They talk about PTSD for military, but go ahead.
Well, when you join the military, you know, you sign on you're generally young at the time, you sign on the dotted line, but you don't realise you're signing your life over to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they feel they can do whatever they want, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I don't believe in coincidence. I mean, you had the contactee experience as a child, and what are the chances of you being, connected in with the Royal Air Force later on?
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, even when I actually joined the Air Force, the process that I joined in Liverpool, and I can remember going over, and it all happened in about 2 weeks from me actually going to find out about joining the Air Force to me being in the Air Force. It was really straight out quick. I think back, it's when I think back, really. At the time, it all happened and you go with the flow. But when you think back, you just think, well, that was really quick. And I can remember the process, you go through the tests and, as you join up, everybody does. And I can remember there being about 15, 20 people that were on the same test that I went for to actually go. And I think there was only 2 of us that passed.
Wow.
Which is, the odds of that, you think, there'd be better odds, wouldn't they, to...
Yeah, well, that says a lot about you then, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I also, you're gonna be joining regardless of whatever you do. So if they think you're going to join for a reason or not,
that's very interesting. Well, I think the Air Force is pretty cool nonetheless. I mean, it's a love-hate relationship with covert technology, but I think when it's used with wisdom and enlightenment, if you can, I think it's a good thing. It's when it becomes weaponized and too secretive and then compartmentalized to a point where it gets, there's a lot of stuff going on right now and I think is very deceptive. Now, I was going to ask you, I talk about the psychological operations, and to me, it seems like some of these contactees, not your case, but I've done a lot of analysis on different types of people who've had my labs, military abductions, and things like that. And I really am, the more I study this, the more I look into it, it seems to me like they're being hit with psychotronic weapons, and they're being they're literally experiencing something that's not really a reality. It's an interface of technology where they're actually experiencing something that's not necessarily valid. It's more technological and it's more psychological. I don't know what your comment is on that, or if you even have one, but that's what I've noticed. I think a lot of this is a mind game.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more you go down that road and that research, little ticks in boxes, you start to think, yeah, okay, that sort of happened to me, or I can relate to that.
Right. Well, I think they created distortion and confusion. I'm not discounting contactees. I think contactees are the real deal. I think later on they try to extract data and then they create the confusion with the psychotronic or covert threat assessment programs where they're dealing with psychological warfare. And I think that takes on the form of technology. And that's why when you talk about, for example, the black triangles and things like this, I'm always looking at it as a beta test. Like they're deploying something more than a laser beam, but there's something else going on. Maybe it's a psychological operation that affects people subconsciously and they don't even know it. And obviously it did, because people saw it, and then what happens, it just goes like wildfire. I mean, it obviously gets registered in the psyche, and now everybody's talking about it. And even to this day, you've written about it. So obviously it was an imprint of some kind. It had its significance, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And did it ever leave a radiation signature? Did everybody check for a radiation?
Probably, but I don't know. I can't, say certainly or not. But, you go back again to people having sightings of throughout the world, not just the UK. And I've said it before. I'm sure that it's people are seeing back engineered craft or secret covert craft, not necessarily out of this world extraterrestrial craft, but when they see the back engineered stuff, military or whatever you want to look at it, it suits these companies because people don't know what they're seeing, so they say UFO, which is unidentified flying object, and it suits these agencies just for the fact that it's the perfect cover story for them. Right. They don't have to come up with any excuse to why they've been seen. They just put it down to UFO, and that's it. It just goes into, it's filed somewhere, and that's it. And people like us go and look it up and think, oh, that happened, or
Right. A lot of anomalies. And the funny thing is, before all this, we always had visitors here, and that's one benchmark we can validate, that we did have, a form of extraterrestrial intelligence or some kind of a visitor program of UFOs, whatever you call them, off-world species, I guess. that were visiting here before all this stuff was documented with our military and our covert military. So there is a benchmark somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and I do believe. I mean, I am a believer, if you call it that. I do believe that a craft visiting, extraterrestrial craft visiting. I do believe also that there are bases here underground where they've been here a long time before us, and so there's a lot of things to go down. And as you know, the word ufology is just a big umbrella, and it just goes off into so many subcategories.
I agree.
You can be here forever and a day and still come up with new ones, of directions, military, my lab, it just goes on and on and on.
Right. Yeah. It's basically a distraction to some degree. I think the UFOs are a distraction to something else that's very, very big. And a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do with array systems and psychological operations. But that's just me. I'm not discounting the UFOs, though. I mean, I believe and I know beyond belief. I know we're star people, that our ancestors are the visitors. We are them and they are us. But there's something going on it's like an obfuscation. They're trying to cloak everything so that we don't maintain that celestial heritage and memory or database. And I think they're doing that deliberately because they want to weaponize a lot of things. That's just my own impression. But it's very interesting. And I think that's why there's the obsession of research, of knowing, wanting to know the gnosis, trying to get into the core issue of what's really happening here on this world.
Yeah, certainly do. It goes back, doesn't it, again to that Richard Draver syndrome again.
Right. Yeah.
It just becomes an obsession. I'm not saying extent some people will be really, really, that's all they'll do is watch YouTube videos, right. And they'll go down the road. Since the birth of the internet, the consciousness is really, really upscaled. It's really, really gone up because at your fingertips, you can search anything and instantly come up with answers where before you'd have to go to libraries or you'd be writing to people and corresponding with people, other ufologists, and it could take months to come up with simple answers. But now it's all touch of a button, touch an iPad and it's there on your lap.
Yeah, it's an instant feed. There's no doubt about that one, which was kind of a good or bad. I mean, it's in between that space.
Yeah.
It could be, depending on what kind of information you're acquiring. But yeah, it's very convenient. There's no doubt about it. But it does allow for people to research and investigate, which I think is really a big deal. And like you said, you can't find certain information. Like even the stuff I went through, I had to really roll up my sleeves and decode a lot of technology. It's not just there. I mean, eventually you find patents, but literally it is a nice platform to some degree when you use it with wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that. And are you doing any public speaking? I know you said that you were going to be doing a few things here and there. Anything coming up like the next month or two?
Only the SETI.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of radio shows like this for the book and things like that. Right. I haven't really spoken in public really before. As you've known me for a long time, and
you're cloaked. I know you've been on my page forever. I was like, really? Yeah. After all these years, I think it's great.
Yeah, I just kept myself under the radar, and
all right.
I've always been happy with that. And don't get me wrong. I get contacted by a lot of people in the background that nobody ever hears about, and obviously confidentiality and things like that. It's quite a big thing for me. I will always, respect people if they come to me with experiences. I get a lot of images, photographs of craft, obviously, and some of them are really fantastic, and also photographs and experiences of beings, and I've got a lot of those. Again, people don't want to come forward, and that's totally fine, but if I can't help them with whatever they need to know, I can always point them in the right direction, because I know a lot of people through research. I know people who are better at looking at experiences or, whatever they need.
Yeah, it's a nice little network. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the background, I do an awful lot.
Yeah, you do.
And again, I analyze so many photographs for people, and I just do it because I want to help people. I want to get the truth out, just like everybody else. But I want them to know the truth of what they're seeing and give them the answers. And most of the time, I'll actually analyze a photograph and just repost. For a good example, somebody will put a photograph on of a sighting on Facebook, example. And I will actually get the image and I will analyze it and repost it. But I don't do anything else. That's what I'll do. And then they'll either contact me later and we go further in with more sightings or whatever, whichever direction they want to go in. But so I've been asked to speak at conferences and I've sort of kindly, declined. Which I think I will start more again. I mean, I was asked to speak there's a conference coming up this year in the UK, the Outer Limits magazine that I write for. And they asked me if I would do a talk there, which I sort of declined, but I think I will do. Colonel Holt's going to be at this one. And like I said, Mary's going to be speaking there, Mary Rodwell. And lots of other speakers. I mean, I don't know if you get to go to many conferences yourself, or
I'm kind of like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah,
I'm too hardcore. They want ooh.
I could understand that.
Yeah.
But you can learn an awful lot. I would say to anybody, no matter how big or how small the conferences are, the ones that are actually produced, the smaller conferences where there are only a couple of speakers, they're really good because it's not just listening to the information of the speakers, which you'll always learn something regardless. But True. It's the other people that are going to these conferences. They're the important people to speak to because they're in the same boat as you generally.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, I am doing the Watchtower events. That's in July. So I will be speaking in July in Colorado. And that's a very small, very small group of people that's presenting, just about, 5 or 6 of us. I'm not sure how many. But yeah, and it pays off on that level because, you're not getting all the watered down stuff. I think there's a certain, I don't know if it's a boys club or a girls club, but there's certain things that go on in that community where it's the same old talking heads, and they're really not saying anything unusual or different. There's just more like cookie cutter data. So, most of us have actually real experience that we're talking from experience, and also our internal research, which is really good. So we'll see how that rolls.
Yeah. I'm also working on another book at the minute. But the first book, like I said, I wanted it to be on a layman's term. So I wanted it to be somebody who could pick that book up and go, oh, right, okay. And it could pull you in that way to, how photographs are analysed, how you go about it. And then through the decades, I mean, I could have put so many UFO accounts, sightings in that book, but I was sort of held back because of the publishing. But I wanted to do really through the decades and sort of show people, this has been happening a long time and people have been photographing it and recording it for a long time. But the next book, I'm going to go into it's still early days, but I want to go into the experiences. So close encounters. And when it's split up into 7 separate categories, the first kind, second, third, and fourth, etc., and go down that road, and then also try and explain each one, and then put cases to each one so people can relate to the first kind, second kind, and try and open up that way.
That's very good. How many kinds are there? Seriously?
7 at the minute.
Really? So what's 7?
Without going into real detail now, but obviously you got Dr. Hynek, who was the is it Blue Book Project, Blue Book, or he was brought in by the US military to debunk ufology and became an expert himself in it, and he actually came up to, I think it was 1, 2, and 3, where the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind was brought out by Spielberg, and he actually had a cameo role in it, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Right.
In the movie, but he didn't want the third kind in.
Really?
He just thought it was first, second, and the third he was quite reluctant. But the later ones, again, it's like anything, like we were saying before, in this field of ufology, when it splits off into subcategories. It's
right.
just like Close Encounters are split off into subcategories, and the later ones have come more, up for people to acknowledge, really, as abductions, and where the military abductions, and again you go down the darker roads in ufology where people have been on craft and said they've seen body parts on crafts, and you can go, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, what about the interface of synthetic telepathy, artificial intelligence interface? That must be one of the seventh kinds.
Yeah.
I'm a hybrid then. Congratulations. I'm hidden in plain sight, but that's okay. But I was curious, because I don't cover any of those kinds. I'm always trying to figure out, well, where do I fit in here? But I'm not quite certain.
That's it. People don't know, and you probably fit into quite a few.
Yeah, I think so. And that's okay. It is what it is, but I've learned to transcend and deal with it. But it's very fascinating. I'd love to see you put that book out. So please let me know when you do that, and I'll get you back on the show. We can talk about it as well. And how do people get your new book before we hit the break? What's the best way to do that?
It's on Amazon and Flying Disc Press, so through Philip Mantle's publishing company. So it's out there. You can find it quite easily.
Okay, and stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. You're listening to Ravenstar's Witching Hour here. Our wonderful guest is Jason Gleaves. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.